It gives me mixed feelings to be calling my friend, the member for Hornsby, to make his valedictory speech. So I call the member for Hornsby.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the House for the indulgence. It's been 13 years since I delivered my inaugural speech to this chamber as an unknown new MP. Today, thanks to Scott Morrison, that's no longer the case. Almost the first words I spoke were about my refusal to approach politics cynically. With the passage of time, despite a little less hair and some lovely character references from my friends at Sky After Dark, I can say unequivocally that my optimism remains undiminished. People elected to this parliament should never forget that politics is a service. And when you stay true to your values, work with a clear purpose, show a willingness to see good people and good ideas across the aisle, and remember we are ultimately here to leave New South Wales in a better state than we inherited it can also be a joy. I was lucky to see the importance placed on service in the family in which I was raised and the community in which I lived. In my maiden speech, I reflected on my grandfather Jack Keane, who served in World War II, and referenced my father Noel Keane's career as a public servant and my mother Cecilia's time as a teacher and a community volunteer. I spoke of a community of volunteers and hardworking, generous and caring people wanting to contribute to our civic fabric. And then to have had the opportunity to serve them as their elected representative is one of life's great honours. I hope I've done justice to the faith shown in me by the people of Hornsby. I cherish the opportunity to work for you and on your behalf. To take Hornsby Hospital from an institution under threat to one of the state's finest. To deliver North Connects and upgrades to New Line Road. And access improvements to Normanhurst, Mount Colah, Hawkesbury River, Thornley and Waitara train stations. Mark Taylor Oval has been redeveloped and the Hornsby Quarry has been converted into one of Sydney's great open spaces, the Centennial Park of the North. We created Barara Valley National Park, protecting an incredible part of our Bushland Shire forever. And Galston and Cowan have finally been connected to the sewage system. I thank everyone who's worked alongside me in delivering results for my community, particularly some of the most special Hornsby locals I've had the pleasure of working with and who have become now my closest of friends. I'd like to acknowledge Peter and Patsy Marshall, Janda Longhorn, the Bainey and Sarkis families who alone make up most of my community. Peter and Frida Srao. Frida left the birthing suite to vote for me in my original pre-selection when her son Joey was only hours old. I'll never forget that. I'll be able to repay that. To Neil Ashworth, Peter Kirkwood, Stuart and Linda English, Laurie Modd, Alexi Boyd, Tilla and Manoj Gera, Ted and Pauline Hennebury, Marie Sumpton, Bruce Wood, Mark Rushton, the Shady family, Terry and Lynn James, Elizabeth Ambrasis, Matt Pinchbeck, Jamie Davidson, Anthea and Theo Klitsch, Lisa Rothwell, Martin Dargan, Kathy Ruggiero and the Steptoe crew, Matt and Carrie Gleeson, Megan Gampson, Sonia and Andy Cameron, Jerry Hook, Mike Langford and Graham Gorry, Roy and Claire Rashpole, Julie Fitzgerald, Brian Fulmer, Ted Boyce, Anthony Sakari, Ian Best, Shannon Jones, Wendy Escott, Adam Cryer, Cole Burke, Pat Dewey, Alf James, Jeff Knowles, Bobby and Maddie Holder, Phil Downey, Rachel Chappell, Mike Begbie, Mel Knudsen and Dave Antrim, Neil Chippendale, the wonderful Kenton Desley Walker, Andrew Marin, you're a dead set legend. I'd particularly like to acknowledge the incredible Kathy Combe. Few have done more to connect and build our community than Kathy. But my gratitude extends further, and please bear with me. Politics is a family business. Politicians sign up for public life, but partners and parents have to ride the ups and downs regardless. I'm so grateful to Wendy and the kids for their patience, love and support. It can't be repaid. To my son Tom, when you read this in a few years' time, I want you to know how much you've been the motivation for everything I do. I love you. To to my mum Cecilia and dad Noel. I won the lottery of life having you as my parents. Thanks. Thank you for your example of service and hard work. It's always been my North Star. To my sister Emma and brother Damien and their families, thank you for everything. I could not be prouder of you. To my extended family, Uncle John, Felicity Keane, Michael Keane, Michael and Carmel Seckledge, Kathy and Eddie Rossiter, Liz and Michael Gallagher, Jared Vince and Deb, Jane and Andy Sutton, Stephen and Joanne Vince, Diane and Patrick Vince, Chris and Kate Vince, Peter and Bernadette Vince. I particularly like to acknowledge my cousins, Brad Keane and his wife Claire, Alex and Anita Keane, Olivia and Brad Howard, for being my most unwavering and loyal supporters. Also my cousin Lockie Keane, who we lost far too soon, and we miss him so much. A special shout out to my cousin Amy Keane, who had to stand aside from all work in New South Wales when I became the Energy Minister. Thank you for that sacrifice and for your unwavering love. Brad, I couldn't have done any of this without you, mate. Each of these people have played a pivotal role in supporting me in the good times and the bad. To my supporters, Kirsty and Peter Gold, Treen Chandler and Chris Barter, Anna Jacobson and Rickard Gardell, Brett Whitford, Susan Lee, Matt Brown, Rob Purves, Gary Zammel, Fred and Therese Wallard, Ben Salmon, Julie Taylor-Mills, Peter Van Beek, Anthony Saltieri, the Lala family, and the utterly brilliant Aidan Allen and his wife Alex, and of course, the great Kim Warwick. Thank you for everything. You've always had my back. I'd like to acknowledge and thank my colleagues in the Parliamentary Liberal Party for their commitment to building a better state. I love the Liberal Party, and I know that it's Liberal values that's what is needed to continue to drive our country forward. I'd particularly like to thank my most loyal and trusted friends and supporters in here, particularly Mark Courret, Chris Rath, Felicity Wilson, Kelly Sloan, Natalie Ward, Jordan Lane, Scott Farlow, and Eleni Patinos. I can never thank you all enough. When I could not even rely on my own vote, I could still count on yours, so thank you very much. To the National Party, I've come to admire the role you play in our coalition family and the important voice you provide regional Australia. I want to thank my friends, John Barilaro, the dominant force in National Party politics, and I want to acknowledge that. My mates Paul Toole, Adam Marshall, Mel Pavey, Bronnie Taylor, and of course, Steph Cook and Ben Franklin, who are actually moderate Liberals undercover. Sorry. Sorry, Ben.
Not undercover now.
Ben, I'm so proud of everything that you have achieved and grateful for your unwavering loyalty and friendship. I acknowledge the 4 premiers that I served under, O'Farrell, Baird, Berejiklian, and my mate Dom Perrottet. Each made a mammoth contribution to the betterment of this state, and I appreciate the opportunities they provided me. So I'm loath to signal one out, but I have to give a special nod to my great friend and mentor, Gladys Berejiklian. I still regard what happened to her as a grave injustice that denied this state of one of its finest premiers and leaders, and I know that the people of New South Wales regard her as fondly as I do. She set the standard when it came to dedication, commitment, and service to the people of this state, and I thank her for her incredible leadership and her unshakable belief that she had in me. I want to thank Mark Speakman for his friendship, and I'm certain that he'll make a fine Premier in 2027 and beyond. I want to thank his staff, and particularly Cheryl Gwilliam, who is amazing. To my incredible mentors who invested so much time, energy and effort in me, particularly our outstanding 29th Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull. He's a great man and a great friend. Thank you, Malcolm. To John Brogden, who, where it all started, thank you forever. Our president, my president, Don Harlan, been a great mentor and friend. Michael Photius, unshakable belief in me, thank you. Paul Fletcher, who's here today, thank you for everything, Paul. And of course, the brilliant Trent Zimmerman. All of those people I mentioned are true Liberals in the Menzies tradition. I want to acknowledge and thank Philip Ruddock for being like a second father to me. Your dedication to public service has been the absolute benchmark. A special shout out to one of my closest friends in politics and in life, who also happens to be one of the most remarkable policy and political minds in the country, and that's Julian Leeser. Julian is one of the most brilliant talents on the Conservative side of politics. The Liberal Party needs him now more than ever, Julian. I want to thank the policymakers and supporters who helped me in various ways. Dr. Paul Grimes, one of the most outstanding public officials in the country. James Hay, Atticus Fleming, Martin Hoffman, John Tansey, Rob Stowe, Rachel Parry, Kate Wilson, Professor Hugh Durrant-White, Chris Armstrong, Professor Alan Finkel, Tracy Mackey, Justice Patricia Bergen, Tim McCullum. All served myself and our state with utter distinction. A special thank you to the Hornsby Council officials who do so much to support the community, especially Stephen Head, James Farrington, Neil Chippendale and Steve Federer. Thank you also to Scott Phillips. Can I also give a shout out to the very gifted Louisa Hearn, Paul Ritchie and Glenn Byers. They are the best wordsmiths in the land, who always made me sound much better than I was. Thank you to my staff, loyally and brilliantly led by two of my best friends, Ben Coles and Sean Berry, in my ministerial office. Both Sean and Ben are two of the best strategic and policy and political minds that I've encountered in my 13 years in Parliament. Sean is easily the best communicator and strategic mind I know, whose insights and advice have been invaluable both to myself and to Gladys Berejiklian. My success was largely due to surrounding myself with brilliant people. To that end, I want to thank all the people that worked in my ministerial teams over the years, particularly Christine Chalker, the best gatekeeper in the business, the brilliant Sharon Larby, Christian Dunk, Dimitri Palmer, Alex Hall, Charlie Hoffman, Mark Connell, Anthony Brewster, Peter Poulos, Emma Rogers, Ava Hancock, Lucy Jones-Hughes, Patrick Blacker, Lars Roy, Big Jack Keppel, Owen Shue, and many more. To my electorate office staff who serve the community of Hornsby with professionalism and dedication, thank you to Nathan Tilbury, Aaron Fawcett, Jeanette Farrell, Stephen Spearings, Amanda Long, Lynn Slevin, Krish Nair, Francis Bolster, David Nuri, and of course the kindest and hardest working electorate officer in the land, Heidi Cameron. Thank you, Heidi, for everything. I mentioned so many and could mention so many more because they helped me turn an early instinct for service into a career that allowed me to effect meaningful change. Finally, I want to thank my Liberal family. The Hornsby Liberals are some of the best you will find across the country. To my SEC President, Andrew Jetson, thank you for everything. To Charles Moyet, Lara Vanderwall, Parveen Gupta, Steve Russell, Warren Woodell, Sally Ann McClellan, Jeremy Greenwood, Graham, Verity Greenwood, Srini Pillamari, Ross Yelland, the great Steve Hopwood, Penny and Ray Becchio, Bill Lee, Peter and Helen McNamee, Uncle Joe Saliba, David Bainey, Martin Pluce, Wayne and Jackie Gober, Steve Ball, Selva Kidnapalali, Paul McKenzie, Paul and Nancy Scuglia, Uncle Chris Avanian, Warren Hendy, Ewan Gilmore, Sabah Hussain, Jack Aberdeen, Tony Bray, Wayne Van Balen, Daniel Dummer, Tom Green, Gina Maxted, Jonah Nader, Joan Stone, Valentino Musico, Dilip Varma, Gurdeep Singh, Paul Keary, Abby Smith. Special shout out to my brilliant, loyal and hardworking treasurer, Richard Hodge. You are a remarkable talent. Also, to my supporters in the broader Liberal family, thank you to Stuart Ayres, Chris Patterson, Damien Tudhope, Sally Betts, David Begg, Lucy Turnbull, Senator Andrew Bragg, Senator Maria Kovacic, Alex Hawke, Mark Texter, Bruce Baird, John Gardner, James Newbury, Alex Dord, Ned Manoon, Tina McQueen, Camelo Pesh, Remo Nogarotto, Tom Callahor and Christopher Pine. Thank you to one of the best officials in the history of the Liberal Party, Chris Stone. Thank you for everything you've done for me, Chris. To James Wallace, you are a once-in-a-generational political talent. Thank you for your outstanding service to the Liberal Party. Thank you to my broader support network, Kristen Stubbins, Bayard Jafari, Mike Cannon-Brooks, Damien Sanford, Steve Simons, Annabelle Daniel, Tim Flannery, Ross Garno, Saul Griffith, the Harris family, Simon Curry, Kerry Schott, Lee Jellisett, Claire Savage, Daniel Westerman, Alex Wanhouse, Chris Gambian, Jack Goff, Justin Field, Gretel Packer, Peter Warren, Martin Parkinson, Jill Kilby, and everyone who played a vital role in supporting my endeavours. I got involved in politics because of an inappropriate development in my neighbourhood. We formed a community action group where I learnt the power of leveraging the political system to achieve outcomes. It set me on a path to becoming an MP. I then became a minister within 6 years of being elected. I served in portfolios for which I had an overwhelming passion, most notably as Minister for Climate Change and Energy, and was the state's treasurer. But politics is not about the positions you hold or the titles you acquire. It's about improving the state and the country for future generations. Throughout my time in politics, that is what I endeavoured to do, and I'm proud of the contribution I was able to make with many others along the way. In particular, I'm very proud of the work we were able to advance to make a little girl born in New South Wales today, make sure that a little girl born in New South Wales today has the same opportunities in life as the baby boy born in the hospital room next door. There is still much more to do. I'm proud that in my first act as Treasurer, I made an unprecedented investment to double the number of women's refuges in New South Wales. No person in modern Australia should live in fear of their safety. No person in modern Australia should fear the darkness on our streets, but that is the lived experience of many women in New South Wales. It's not acceptable, and I genuinely hope our state and our nation can finally conquer the blight of domestic violence and violence against women. I want to recognise all the contributions that various campaigners for women's safety have made during my time in Parliament. I'm proud of the investments we made in this area, but I encourage every member in this place, when you have an opportunity to advocate for programs and community groups on the front line or allocate funding, do so and do it without hesitation. I'm also proud of the work myself and my team did with the incredible Sam Mostyn, who, by the way, will make a great Governor-General. The work she did will improve the lives of millions of women across New South Wales. Our economy and our society are at their best when we afford every person the opportunity to contribute to our country and pursue the career of their choosing. We legislated a $5 billion investment over the next decade to expand access to high-quality, affordable childcare in those areas of the state where access to childcare is the biggest barrier to women returning to work. I'd also like to get on the record that none of that would have happened without my former Deputy Chief of Staff, Ava Hancock. She drove and authored these reforms. She is passionate and brilliant and has a big future ahead of her. Let's be clear. No person should have to choose between a family and their career. Too often in our state, women have had to make that compromise. Not only is that an injustice, not only is that an affront to liberal values of egalitarianism and reward for effort, it's also a handbrake on the prosperity of this state. But more than a solution of affordable, accessible childcare and a great childhood education, but more than that, the solution of affordable, accessible childcare and a great childhood education can set our children up for success as well. We know that the first 5 years of a person's life will have a huge bearing on what they will be able to achieve in their life. I believe that a person should only be limited by the size of their dreams and the strength of their work ethic, not the financial circumstances in which they were born. I've always believed that the best assets of our state of New South Wales are the people of New South Wales themselves. As Treasurer, I saw our huge childcare and early education commitments not as expenditure, but as investment. An investment that will pay a dividend to this state for decades to come. But I also recognised as Treasurer the absolute importance of making investments in our future in a way that's financially sustainable. Every dollar we borrow today needs to be paid off by our children. While I was the Treasurer of our state, I absolutely made sure we invested in our people, but we did so in a prudent way. During my time as Treasurer, we experienced the worst pandemic in Australia's history, the most expensive natural disaster on record, and a commitment to continue the coalition government's generational improvement in our infrastructure. But we responded in a way that kept us on track for surplus and kept the state's AAA credit rating. Make no mistake, the budget that we saw handed down this week, which delivered a decade of deficits, will leave our children with a bill of higher taxes and worse public services. Every parent I know wants to leave a legacy for their children, whether it's the values they instill, a good education, or the family home. Public finances are the same. We should never leave a structural debt, and we should always understand it is the obligation of this generation to pay off its own debts. I don't want our children to choose between the taxes they can't afford and the health policy they deserve when the next pandemic comes around. The better we manage the state's finances, the more freedom we give future generations to chart their own course, unencumbered by the choices we made. The reason why the Liberal Party has always been better at managing the state's finances is because we understand that society is a covenant between the past to the present and the present to the future. Liberals understand that we are merely custodians of our country and our planet for future generations. And it's incumbent on us not to squander what was bequeathed to us, but to build a better future for those that come after us. But as a Liberal in the 21st century, the biggest challenge to that principle is climate change. In the same way that we as Liberals believe that you should not leave a financial debt to future generations, I believe that it's incumbent upon us not to leave an environmental debt to future generations. Climate change is the challenge of our generation, which needs a once-in-a-generation response. My grandparents' generation fought for freedom in the Second World War. My parents' generation saw off the threat of communism during the Cold War. It's incumbent on our generation to take decisive and responsible action on climate change. This is the biggest challenge that will face our society and our economy in our lifetime. We know that, Mr. Speaker, can I have an extension?
I thought you were just going to keep ignoring it anyway, Matt. But,
that's my usual practice in here, Mr. Speaker.
I think the House was going to indulge that anyway. We're enjoying this, but I will put the question. The member for Hornsby has sought an extension of time. All of that opinion say aye. The contrary, no. Matt, please continue.
It is incumbent on our generation to take decisive and responsible action on climate change. This is the biggest challenge that will face our society and our economy in our lifetime. We know that climate change will lead to more extreme weather events, and that these are already happening now. During my time in this place, we saw the worst bushfires New South Wales has ever had, the worst drought that we've ever had, the most expensive natural disaster event that we've ever had in the form of the Lismore floods. And for the critics who complain of an economic and financial cost from acting on climate change, let me tell you, as Treasurer, I saw the catastrophic cost of not acting. The cost of rebuilding infrastructure, towns, lives and livelihoods, and there's no comparison. These natural disasters are exactly what the scientists have warned us about for decades. But tackling climate change is not just a threat. It's one of the biggest economic opportunities that we've ever seen. It's the way we drive down cost of living pressures for families and businesses. We're not only a sun-burnt country, we're a sun-blessed country. Our country's sun and wind can deliver us some of the cheapest, cleanest and most reliable energy anywhere in the world. This will free us from our dependency on ageing power stations and from the shocks of global energy markets. Often in the community debate on this issue, the transition to renewables is positioned as a choice between clean energy and affordable energy, between the planet's future and our economic prosperity. Let me be clear, there is no choice. The way to put downward pressure on electricity prices is to build more renewables. Our electricity prices have gone up in recent years because fossil fuel prices have gone through the roof and because coal plants are getting less reliable as they age. We do not have higher electricity prices in Australia because we have too much renewable energy. We have higher electricity prices in Australia because we do not have enough renewable energy. Realising the opportunity of renewable energy in our country is not going to be easy. We need to replace coal. We need to electrify our vehicles. We need to electrify our homes. And if we're going to realise the great economic opportunity here, we need to build gigawatts of renewables to supply green hydrogen, green steel, green aluminium and green data centres to our region and to the world. Make no mistake, there is an economic arms race underway to capture the next generation of investment, resources, jobs and innovation that's exploding around the world. And I want Australia to corral every cent of investment available to us. We have the potential to be a renewable energy superpower, which can not only protect our natural environment, but can also underwrite our prosperity for generations to come. We need to recognise that but we also need to recognise that there's genuine community concern about the energy transition. But if we do this right, the ongoing jobs and opportunities that come from a net zero global economy is the biggest economic development opportunity that regional Australia has ever had. It is an opportunity to ensure that young people in our regional centres have high-paying, quality jobs in their hometowns, and families across the country benefit from the lower power bills that will come with the transition. That is the promise of the energy transition if we get it right. That's why we gave investors the policy comfort they needed by delivering the biggest renewable energy policy in Australia's history in the Electricity Infrastructure Roadmap. It brings together reverse auctions for renewable energy generation, long-duration storage and firming. It brings contestability to transmission in New South Wales. It's one of the most comprehensive energy transition policies anywhere in the world. Since it was legislated, it has already withstood substantial tests. Not only have we seen investors commit to build 6 gigawatts of renewable energy generation in New South Wales, not only is the Central West Orana RES underway, not only have we seen successful long-duration storage tenders, But we were also able to deliver the Waratah super battery and hundreds of megawatts of extra firming to help support the reliability of our state's power system for when Eraring closes. And we're on track to meet our emission reduction targets, which are ambitious, science-aligned, and achievable. We did it in a way that respects fundamental conservative and free market principles. The Electricity Infrastructure Roadmap created a framework to capture investment, not stifle it. We sought to harness the power of markets and the private sector to deliver new infrastructure, freeing up the state's balance sheet to invest in schools, hospitals, and roads, exactly what it should be doing. Our country is at its best when the powers of government and the expertise, ingenuity, and the experience of the private sector work as one towards building a better country for all of us. And that's exactly what the roadmap does. We matched it with ambitious policies to make New South Wales a first mover on hydrogen and the best place in Australia to buy, own, and drive an electric vehicle. I'm particularly thankful for the team that helped me deliver the roadmap: James Hay, Liam Ryan, Chloe Hicks, Ava Hancock, Paul Grimes, and Brad Hopkins. However, I want to especially recognise the contribution of my outstanding former Chief of Staff, Ben Coles. If there's an intellectual architect of the roadmap, it's Ben. More than anyone, he saw the energy transition opportunity, and it was his endeavours that developed the ambitious policy we see today. I'm also delighted that at least in New South Wales, we've effectively ended the climate wars. I give genuine credit to the ALP and the crossbench members who worked in goodwill to refine and legislate the roadmap. I want to acknowledge in particular John Barilaro. John always believed in creating jobs and prosperity in the bush, and he saw the economic opportunity offered by the transition, and in particular the chance to diversify regional economies. The roadmap could not have happened without him, and I want that firmly on the record. It is also fitting to mention the role of Adam Searle, a fine Labor man with an excellent policy mind who was critical to this policy. I want to recognise the contributions to the roadmap of Ben Franklin, who I think sat up all night to get it through the Parliament, David Shoebridge, Alex Greenwich, Paul Scully, Yasmin Catley, and of course you, Mr. Speaker, for the important role you played representing a community heavily affected by the energy transition. It's fair to say that every one of those individuals and countless more were willing to find areas of common ground and avoid the temptation of putting politics first and instead the people of this state first. Mr. Speaker, that's when this place works best. When we recognise the legitimate objectives and concerns of different communities across this state and try to address them with respect as best we can. Mr. Speaker, some see politics as a platform to build profile. Some see politics as a point-scoring parlour game. Others see politics as about popularity or power. Mr. Speaker, I believe politics is about bringing people together, working in common cause to achieve common goals for the common good. Politics is about leadership. I got involved in politics not to administer the state, but to reform it for the better. That's what politics is about. And those of us fortunate enough to hold political office should always remember that we're on the stage for a short period of time. And that's become very clear to me this week. So my message to everyone in this place is to be ambitious, not for yourselves, but for what's possible for our state and for our country. The great public officers are there to do great things for the public. No one else can pass laws or marshal our collective resources in the way that we can here. And so rise to the challenges of our time, see a better future for our state, and go ahead and build it. Where we can find unity and purpose, the solutions will be more substantial and more durable. So let's disagree where we must, but find common ground where we can. Because it is on that common ground that we can build lasting change. And let us do both these things with respect and civility. We live in an era of social media, fueled by algorithms designed to engage and divide us, and only give us the information we agree with. We see threats to the best traditions of Western liberalism, whether it's the cynical populism of Donald Trump or the outright authoritarianism of Russia and China. We are currently confronting horrific anti-Semitism that ignores some of the darkest days in the history of modern civilization. So we need to show that democracy can work. I truly believe that most people who live in this country and serve in this chamber want the best for our country and its citizens. So let's rally to that cause and show that we can tackle the greatest challenges confronting our generation. It's about protecting our freedoms, our liberties, the rule of law, and democracy. It's about ensuring that everyone in our society is able to live safe and secure, free from threats abroad and within. It's about handing down a world that is in a better state than the one we inherited. For the 13 years that I've been in this Parliament, that's been my North Star. As I look up at my family, my son Tom, my stepchildren Jasmine and Monique, you are our future. Of course it's required sacrifice. There have been missed school nights and sports days, and put simply, moments that time can never be recovered. I'm certain that every parent in this place feels the same tension between service and family. But what we do in here matters. And if we're diligent in our work and noble in our intent, we should ensure that they inherit a state that is stronger, cleaner, healthier, and more prosperous than ever before. We live in the most beautiful part of the world. Sydney's harbour and its beaches are the ribbon that ties our city together. From Bateman's Bay to Bondi to Byron. The New South Wales people are a people who look out from the beaches toward the morning's light. Tom, Jasmine and Monique, I hope as the sun rises on your generation, your future will be a little brighter because of what we achieved here while I was in this place. I want to thank everyone who's worked with me on this journey, and I wish you all the very, very best.
Oh, yeah.